I read the Marvel magazine of fantasy and science fiction made in December 1981 from Epic. And I read the climax of Metamorphosis Odyssey and the beginning of an all-new Weirdworld adventure. So, let's go. I'm going to start with the climax of the Metamorphosis Odyssey. So that's what I read first. And it's called Doomsday. It's the chapter. And this is the picture. So, I think to start, the illustration is very colorful, as you can see, especially on the first page. It's very colorful, and even on the second page, there's a lot of fire, and it's very red, which I think shows, the climax, as it's called in the title. It's very climactic, it's very intense, and the fire definitely goes to show that its climax is intense. And so, basically, what the story is about is this guy.
DREADSTAR.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry. And the author is
Jim Starlin.
Jim Starlin. Yes. And so, it starts with these guys. One named Vanth and the other DREADSTAR. Sorry. And so, basically, they are fighting with fire against the villains, or the antagonists, one might say. And so, they're using guns and swords.
The aliens, right? The aliens.
The aliens, yes. Sorry. They're fighting the aliens in the Milky Way galaxy. And so, then Vanth asks him, can you have them blow into the horn so that the transition can start and bring the new world of tomorrow into it? And so they're still fighting. He's saying, you need to back me up in this. He's saying, you need to back me up so I don't die. And then in the next page, you can see 3 of them blowing into the horn to start the transition into the new world. And they talk about this being like the cleansing power of death, being like, how I interpreted that, I guess, is like the rebirth, like being reborn into a new galaxy. And so that's what they're doing there. And I think the colors are to be like more otherworldly. Like, as you can see, it's blue, and it's kind of like definitely a galaxy vibe I got from that. And so the horn sounds, and then they go into, and then everything blows up, essentially. And so you can see the graphics here, and in the imagery, I feel like it definitely is intense there, and it shows me like fire and things blowing up and basically destruction. And so, then you kind of see the transition and everything being powered together here. Like, let me show you that. And so, like, the galaxies and the barriers and everything just kind of setting into place. And then they talk about how, like, it doesn't seem the cosmos are strong, but they're trying to resist the power or the process of it all. And so that's what's going on in this picture. Let's see. And so then the Milky Way dies, and eventually it realigns itself to become a new galaxy, as we find out later on. And so then there's some illustration right here. Some illustration on both of these pages that kind of talk about a new beginning being born. As I said, like, tomorrow is being born. And so they say 5 souls escaped the fate, and that others will be coming soon. And so, but it's just going to take longer. And so then, that's kind of what that's showing, them in the bubble, as we find out later that that's them in the bubble, the van. And so then you see a light come down, and then I'm pretty sure I interpret that as the bubble, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And so then they crash down, and it's Vanth and what's the name?
Agatha.
Okay. And so then it's both of them, and they land, and then they wake up from this, and basically, yeah, they just he kind of explains. Agatha explains to him why he let them live and they had to kill everyone else in the process. And he says that he has more of a purpose on this planet than he realizes, and he needs to wait for these other people to help him with this process because it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult journey. And so then on the last page, it kind of mentions how it says, "For yesterday's sins live forever within one's heart, and the damned always walk alone, always alone." And then you see Vanth walking away alone, which I think that is...
So he killed him, right? He killed Agatha.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I forgot to mention that. He killed Agatha, in this page because he was upset with him that he let all of these people die, but they got to live, and he just didn't want to have that burden of the fact that he killed all these people without even knowing, but he did. And so then he killed, Agatha in this one, and I think that goes back to show the intensity and the violence of it all, like the fact that you can see all the blood in that, like right there, you can see the blood and you can see the 3 lines from the gun, the fire. I think that's pretty graphic, but also does a good job at showing the intensity of the situation. And so then after he kills him, like I said, at the end, he walks away alone, he walks away alone. And so then that's honestly the end of that story, but what I took away from this was that I think it was an interesting story. I think it had good plot points, like the fact that he killed him in the end, I think shows a lot. Like, while he might have helped him live, he always knew he was going to die. Agatha, he always knew he was going to die because he said, "I'm sorry, I goaded you into killing me," which is on this page. And so I think he's basically saying, like, I always knew I was going to die, but I had to get you here first. And so, yeah, that's the end of that story. Now I'm moving on to the other story I read. So I'll find it. I read Weirdworld, The Dragon Master of Clarn, written by Doug Moench and drawn by John Buscema. Buscema.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
And rendered by Marie Severin. And so it starts with, there's a map also. I'd like to see the map. And there's an introduction that I read right before that, just kind of leading you into what you're about to read. And so, yeah, the map, I'll show you. There is Clarn over... So you see that ring right there, that's Clarn, and that's pretty sure where the elves are from. And so then, yeah, there's Perilous Island, I think is how you say it, also. And so, on the first page, it shows the game of God, a game the gods play, and it's like, almost like chess, I guess one could compare it to. And I think that illustration is I think it's very creative, how they set that up. I think it's a nice look. And so then the story goes on, and the illustrations, I think, what I notice is they're very colorful, very bright, but then they also have contrast because there's the darker part of the of the world where it's being cast upon by, I want to say, Clarn, I think is casted upon, as they mentioned. And so it's darker in those images where it's being casted upon. And so then we find out that there's this guy, Mercandor, and there's the Magister, which I'll show you. That's the Magister's in purple up there, and Mercandor's the guy down here, down there. And so he wants him to go to this island where these dwarves live and take the crystal, which is the thing casted down, and making it so the dragons are warm and they don't want to act up and become violent. And so then you meet the two main characters, I'd say, or prominent characters, and this is the girl. I'll tell you her name in a minute. And so
Ilana.
Yes, Ilana. And so that's her name. And so then she kind of explains how she's tired of living this life with the dwarfs because they just want her to basically do all these chores. I'll show you that, where she's doing her chores right there. And so she's just talking about how she doesn't want to clean the water anymore. And, so most of these pictures are all, like, at least on this side, are very colorful. But then on this side, it shows the casting in the shadow, under Clarn's shadow. And so, like, as you can see, it's very nice where it's not being casted upon, but then it's very dark where it is. So, and then they talk about Valina and Tyndall. They talk about how they always wanted to go to Clarn, but they weren't able to get up there, and so they had to settle for living with the dwarfs, but they don't always accept them. Well, not always, they just don't accept them because of their differences, their elf ears, and so they just felt like outcasts. And so then they kind of get into a few arguments over here. As you can see, she's kicking the flowers, if you can see that. Yeah, because he made that for her. And so I think that shows the arguments they get into. And so then later on, the Mercandor, I think is his name. Yeah, he goes and he breaks the crystal, as you can see, with his newfound power that the Magister gave him. He breaks the crystal, which means the dragons wake up, and so then they're mad. As you can see, dragons right there, they start getting mad, and they have the dwarfs have this idea that they will light a fire so they remain warm, but in fact that actually only made it worse. As you can see, that's the fire. And so they light the fire, it only makes them madder. And then I think the fire illustration is very well done, as I showed you. I think, like, it shows, like, intensity as well in this one, and it also shows that it's just getting more violent. And so then this dwarf that always got along with them, Mudbutt. He comes back and he's telling them, hey, you need to come help because the dragons they're getting worse. And they're getting more violent because the crystal's now broken. And so then Valina, she talks about how she wants to help and she wants to go with him. She wants to go with Mudbutt, but Tyndall, he's kind of against it. He's like, already built this life here, so why don't we stay and see it through. And so then the crystal forms its shape again because the Magister reforms, as you can see right here. And so he reforms it to reverse to its original purpose. And so then all the dragons awaken, and as you can see right here, they're awakening, starting to get violent and fighting. And then what's weird is Tyndall, in all this violence, he remains calm, and he starts sitting in a crisscross position. I'll show you that right there. And at first, Mudbutt and Valina are just like, what is he doing? Why is he, like, we need to save him because they think he's in danger. But then he starts singing a song that he remembered, and because he had forgotten about this life that he used to have. And so he starts singing this song right here, and it appears he's standing on a rock. And so then the dragons start to become more tame and listen to him because he's the dragon whistler, I think. And so then there's a bunch of fire. Like on this page, there's an entire page of the dragon shooting fire, and I think that's a really good illustration, very colorful, very well drawn. And so then in the end, he saves everyone, but then the elves, or the dwarves, are still blaming him, so mad at him because of his differences, specifically elf ears and, just the fact that he's an elf and they're dwarves. And so he's shunned and he's forced to leave. And so then Tyndall and Valina and Mudbutt all leave together in this picture. Okay. And so then that's the end of that one. And then there's this, I'll tell you the, right here. Okay. And so this was the wordless illustrations, and this was by Craig Russell.
P. Craig Russell, yeah.
P. Craig Russell. And so basically there's really no words, but something's always repeated throughout, and it says, beauty without the beloved is like a sword through the heart. So maybe I'll interpret that, what I thought that meant at the end, but this is the beginning picture, and there's an angel, I assume. And I think the illustration, just well drawn, very well drawn. It's very specific, I think, with the details. And so the story is relatively hard to follow, I think, because of the lack of words. But, I'll just show most of the pictures because I think that's the most interesting part. Okay, so then illustrations. He meets this woman whom I also assume is an angel, but I'm not quite sure. And so then in the end, he is, well, it appears to me that he got stabbed. And so I think that's just kind of the whole point of this story, is to repeat it again, beauty without the beloved is like a sword through the heart. And so I think when he met the woman and then he didn't find the love he was looking for, it felt like a sword through the heart. And so that embodies this image right here and how he's getting stabbed through the heart. Because it's kind of just basically saying without love, it's like, it feels like a sword, essentially. So that's it.